That Mike Tyson aura about him. He likes to intimidate guys. He looks intimidating. I mean, he's got that presence. Do you think he'll try to do that on you, and will it work?
Yeah, I mean, that's what he does to all his opponents, and a lot of people fall into that, unfortunately. That's one of the big problems with this sport is they look at a guy, they look at his physique, they look at his record, and all of a sudden they're intimidated and they've lost the fight before they even get in the cage.
The UFC broke their own bank to sign him. $400,000 guaranteed. The biggest prospect contract in company history. They called him the most dangerous middleweight on the planet. But they were wrong. Dead wrong. Hector Lombard entered the UFC with a 31-2-1 record, multiple knockouts, and a Bellator championship belt. Olympic judo pedigree, dynamite in both fists. On paper, unstoppable. But paper doesn't throw punches. And the man that they paid superstar money to, he immediately looked like anything but. The most expensive signing became the biggest bust. The scariest prospect became a harsh reminder of what happens when hype overshadows reality. This is the story of Hector Lombard, the $400,000 beast who became the UFC's most embarrassing investment. Now, you don't get born into comfort in Cuba, especially not under Castro's regime. Hector Lombard came up the hard way: grit, discipline, and government-mandated sports schools. That is what molded him. From childhood, he trained in judo like it was religion. Hours on the mat, perfecting throws and grips before he even hit puberty. By the time that he was 22, he was representing Cuba on the global stage, the 2000 Sydney Olympics lightweight division. No medals, but the world noticed. Then came the gamble of a lifetime, defecting. While still in Australia after the games, he made the call. He wasn't going back. He stayed. And that is where the second life began. Settling in Gold Coast, he met his future wife, learned English the hard way, and started training with elite kickboxers like Nathan Corbett. He also picked up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, earning his black belt under Marcus Conan Silveira. In just 5 years, he went from Olympic judoka to pro MMA wrecking ball. Now, you know how some guys take time to adjust when they move from one sport to another? Lombard didn't. He just bulldozed through everyone. He debuted in 2004, and over the next few years, he fought everywhere. Australia, Japan, South Korea, even Serbia, and he was flatlining people. His fights usually didn't make it past the first round, and if they did, it wasn't by choice, it was survival. He combined Olympic caliber judo with raw, freakish power. That left hook, you did not want to test it. His throws looked like suplexes from pro wrestling. Ground and pound was ruthless. Every movement was a blitz. Guys like Brian Ebersol, Art Santori, Joe Dorkson, Jesse Taylor, they all got crushed. He went undefeated in Australian promotions, holding multiple belts, including the Cage Fighting Championship and the Australian FC titles. And he racked up a ridiculous 24-fight win streak. Every opponent said the same thing. He hits like a truck. By 2009, everyone was saying it. And that is when Bellator came calling. And this is when Hector became a myth. In Bellator, he was a one-man highlight reel. He signed in 2009 and ran through the inaugural middleweight tournament and wrecked Jared Hess in the finals via doctor stoppage. And that earned him the first ever Bellator middleweight title. And he held on to it like a dog with a bone. Over the next few years, he went 8-0 in the promotion. 6 finishes, 5 knockouts. Most fights didn't make it out of round 1. His average fight time, just under 8 minutes. The Jay Silva knockout was only 6 seconds, the fastest KO in Bellator history. He dismantled Alexander Shlemenko. To defend his title, he crushed Trevor Prangley, Herbert Goodman, Valenko Vitali, all in non-title bouts. But he was too dangerous to risk in tournament brackets anymore. Bellator kept throwing him showcase fights, and he kept making them look like amateurs. Promoter Bjorn Rebney called him the best middleweight not in the UFC, and MMA media ran with it. They dubbed him the boogeyman of 185 pounds. But Bellator couldn't contain him forever. The big leagues were watching. By early 2012, Hector Lombard was no longer a rumor, he was the free agent. A walking knockout streak, Bellator's unbeaten monster. And with his contract nearing expiration, every major promotion wanted a piece.
What's the deal with him? He's after him or what?
I guess he's pretty popular down here.
He
was at the weigh-ins today. Like, and
was he really?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
He was just in the audience, and out in the auditorium, he had like 100 people around him. Seriously.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been hearing all about him since I've been here.
Well, I mean,
he's under contract with somebody else.
but I hear it ends like around June, July. So
I'll probably end up with him then.
well, I hope so.
I hope so.
I hope
He'd be
so.
awesome in your middleweight.
I mean, he's like in his prime now.
Yeah.
I
If he wants
mean,
to fight in the UFC, then we'll probably.
And he's a ball terror, that guy. He's like, I don't know how he'll go against you guys, but in the other CFC, he has everyone.
well, even in Bellator, he's the champion now.
At 6 seconds. Dana, we've held for the UFC 3 years in a row. Can we just put it on paper that we work for you?
That way?
That we work for you now?
Yeah, pretty much. I guess so.
Well, we've been told we're part of the family.
Except it costs you money to work.
The UFC saw an opportunity. Dana White went public with praise, reportedly calling him the most dangerous middleweight in the world.
I like him. I like him. I like him a lot.
I think he revealed that there's a contract offer. Is there any update on what the status that is?
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Bellator had matching rights, but let's be honest, they were never going to outbid the UFC. Behind the scenes, it got messy. Lawyers were involved. Press releases were fired back and forth. Bjorn Rebney tried to keep him, but once Zuffa put real money on the table, it was over. MMA media couldn't stop talking about it. Is this the next Anderson Silva? Will Lombard leapfrog into a title shot? How much is he worth? Then came that number, $400,000, guaranteed. That was the deal the UFC offered Hector Lombard, a base salary of $300,000 to show and a $100,000 win bonus even before pay-per-view points or sponsorships. And this wasn't a contract, it was a billboard saying, "We believe this guy is championship material." Now at that time, that kind of money was unheard of for a debuting fighter. Champions weren't even making that. Veterans were jealous, fans were stunned. But the UFC didn't care. They weren't paying for a prospect, they were buying a statement. They pictured a bulldozer running through the division, selling tickets, starching opponents, and lining up a mega fight with Anderson Silva. This wasn't just hype, this was a public investment. And with that kind of cash came pressure. Lombard wasn't just entering the UFC, he was walking into a cage with the weight of $400,000 on his shoulders. And right from the jump, analysts talked title contention. Betting markets had him as a heavy favorite in the division. UFC hype packages ran non-stop. Judo throws, knockout clips, training footage, media day soundbites. There were whispers that if he impressed in his debut, he would be next in line for Anderson Silva. The comparisons only made the spotlight hotter. Fans expected carnage. The UFC expected dominance. Dana expected results. But the Octagon, well, they don't care about contracts. His first opponent was Tim Boetsch. It was supposed to be Brian Stann, but Stann pulled out with a shoulder injury. The UFC plugged in Boetsch, a rugged, durable, top 10 guy, but someone that Lombard was expected to bulldoze.
Fans are going to be into this fight, guaranteed. While it may have been fun to beat up Michael Bisping, I think career-wise, this fight is a better fight for me.
I was talking to Mark Munoz before his fight against Chris Weidman, and there was a lot of talk, of course, that if Mark beat Chris, he would be the #1 contender. And I said, well, what if Hector Lombard gets a shot before you? He said Hector Lombard has been, quote-unquote, recycling cans in other organizations for years. So he's on this impressive unbeaten streak, 25 straight fights. And you look at those opponents, you compare them to you. Has he fought anyone close to your level, in your opinion?
No, he is not, and that's just the way it is. The UFC has a deeper pool of talent and more skilled fighters, and it's something that he's going to have to get used to. But, I don't want to take anything away from him. Nobody wins 25 fights in a row by accident. The guy's good. He's a heck of a fighter. He's very aggressive, and he's always looking to finish his opponents. But that being said, he has not faced an opponent like me, and he's going to find a much more talented level of fighter here in the UFC.
What's his biggest weakness in your opinion?
Well, the one thing that comes to mind right away is his cardio. Guys in the UFC know how to push the pace for 15 minutes straight, and me dropping down to middleweight, I certainly can do that now. So if I need to take this fight into deep water, I think he's going to struggle there.
It felt like a formality, just an intro for the audience. Fight analysts picked Lombard across the board. He was undefeated in 6 years. This was just step one. But they forgot one thing. The cage has no script. July 21st, 2012, UFC 149. It was supposed to be the coronation. Instead, it was confusion. From the opening bell, something felt off. Lombard didn't look like a monster. He looked stiff, slow, tentative. He landed some strikes and a takedown, sure, but where was the pressure, the explosion? Boach circled, jabbed, stayed just out of range. He frustrated Lombard, who never kicked into gear. By round 3, the crowd was booing. 30 minutes earlier, this man was supposed to be the future of the division. Now, he had just lost a split decision in one of the dullest fights of the year. Even Dana White looked baffled. The MMA community lit up with posts like $400,000 for that? Suddenly the price tag looked like a liability. The excuses came first. Ring rust, octagon jitters, last-minute opponent change. Dana tried to defend him, said it was just a bad night, but even he did not sound convinced. Lombard promised it would never happen again. He overhauled everything: diet, coaches, training. The UFC gave him one more shot. October 19th, 2013, UFC 166, Nate Marquardt. Do or die. Lombard dropped to welterweight. He looked shredded, focused, and this time, he delivered. 1 minute, 48 seconds. That is how long it took to wipe out Marquardt with a brutal knockout. For the first time in the UFC, he looked like the destroyer that fans had been promised. The narrative flipped again. Maybe welterweight's his real home. Contender talk returned, but all false hope needs a fall, and his was coming fast. March 15th, 2014, UFC 171, Jake Shields. Second welterweight fight. No finish, but pure control. Takedowns, pressure, smart pacing. He won a clear decision. His gas tank held. The critics got quiet. The rebuild seemed real. Then came the truth. March 19th, 2016, UFC Fight Night 85, Neil Magny. Lombard started hot. Dropped Magny, swarmed him, inches from a finish. But round 2 exposed everything. His gas tank evaporated. The pressure died. Magny got up and started dissecting him. By round 3, it was ugly. Magny flattened him with relentless ground strikes. TKO loss. Same issues, different opponent. No cardio, no plan B. And now, he was 38. The decline wasn't coming, it was here. But the worst blow came outside of the cage. After his win over Josh Berkman in early 2015, Lombard tested positive for desoxymethyltestosterone, an anabolic steroid. The fight was already forgettable, but now it was overturned. Suspended, fined, embarrassed.
UFC welterweight Hector Lombard has been banned from the cage for 1 year for failed drug test in January. But the Nevada Athletic Commission rejected the pleas, handing down a swift sentence, which also included a nearly $70,500 US fine.
The UFC backed away. Fans rolled their eyes. No wonder he was explosive. The new division didn't fix him, the weight cut didn't save him, and the drug test, it crushed what little hope was left. Now let's run the numbers. The UFC guaranteed Lombard $400,000 just to walk through the door. And that's not counting the training costs they helped cover, the promotional campaigns they ran, or the pay-per-view slots that he wasted. He ended up fighting 12 times in the UFC. His record? 3 wins, 8 losses, 1 no contest. So what did they get for their investment? No title fights, no viral knockouts, no fan base, no ticket-selling rivalries. From a business standpoint, it was a net loss, one of the worst in UFC history. Dana White even reportedly admitted they overpaid. This wasn't just a bad bet. It was a lesson in bright neon lights about believing the hype.
I can understand why the UFC would want to make that fight. He's on an incredible win streak and he's a champ of another organisation. So he's coming into the UFC with a lot of hype, and if he can come in and get a big win, you know, maybe that's a marketable challenge for Anderson Silva. So I can kind of understand that a little bit. But as I've said in interviews before, you know, he's been fighting, I don't know where he's been fighting and who these people are he's been beating, but I've never heard of any of them. You know, bloody part-time builders and bakers from around the corner, you know. This is the UFC now, you know, this is the real deal. So we'll see how he does tomorrow night. I'm sure he'll do fine. As long as somebody gives him a hand to get into the cage, maybe give him a little step up to get in, he'll be all right, you know. Maybe he can stand on someone's shoulders.
Hindsight's brutal, but let's be honest, the red flags were everywhere. He was 34 when he debuted in the UFC, already past the athletic peak. His cardio had been questioned in longer fights, even in Bellator. His game hadn't evolved, it was still judo tosses and a looping left hook. And the steroid thing? Well, people had been suspicious for years. The UFC bought a resume, but they didn't study the film. They saw a wrecking ball and ignored the slow motion parts. The moments between the knockouts where fatigue crept in and technique broke down. They fell for the hype train, full speed, no brakes. And it cost them. Lombard was supposed to shake up 2 weight classes. Instead, he left them exactly the same. Middleweight kept moving. Welterweight never blinked. The spot he took could have gone to a younger, hungrier prospect, someone who might have evolved, someone who didn't fade after round 1. His failure made the UFC rethink how they evaluate new signings, especially older ones. You could call it the Lombard effect. Every big signing after that came with more caution, more vetting, more wait and see. Because no one wanted another $400,000 bust. Now, let's strip away the interviews, the excuses, and the highlight reels. Lombard's UFC run? 3 wins, 8 losses, 1 no contest. I mean, that is it. He has only finished 2 opponents in the UFC. For all the hype that he had, just 2. And it was against Nate Marquardt and Husamar Palhares. Everything else was decision losses, cardio collapses, or disqualifications. And remember, he was brought in as a title contender. He ended up losing to journeymen, veterans, even prospects. Compare that to the money spent, the media effort, the contract size. No other fighter in UFC history has ever been given that level of upfront investment and returned so little. Lombard changed the way the UFC looks at hype. He wasn't the first big prospect to disappoint, but he was the most expensive one to do it publicly. Lombard's style was built on pressure, speed, and explosion. It worked in Bellator, but in the UFC, opponents were smarter. They kept him at range, survived the early blitz, and dragged him into deep waters. At 34, with no backup plan and a fading gas tank, Lombard's raw power wasn't enough. He had no volume, no adaptability, and no second wind. Scouts now ask tougher questions. Can this guy go 3 rounds? Has he faced elite competition? Is he too old? Is his game evolving? The UFC learned to stop signing on reputation alone. Other promotions took notes too. Bellator, ONE, PFL, they all slowed down on handing out big checks to unproven free agents. Every prospect after Lombard was evaluated under a microscope. The bar got higher and the leash got shorter. After the UFC, Lombard never really recovered. He bounced around between smaller promotions, fought in Eagle FC, BKFC, Gramda, even bare-knuckle brawls in warehouses. There were wins here and there, but also DQs, illegal strikes, and no contests. The skill was still there in flashes, but the aura was gone. His reputation took a hit, so did his bankability. The guy once dubbed the scariest middleweight alive became a punchline, the face of what happens when potential stays potential. Behind the scenes, he kept training, kept fighting. Still loved combat, but he knew the window had closed. And the price of failure? He wore it every time he walked to the cage. Lombard's collapse wasn't just about one fighter. It was about scouting, evaluation, decision-making at the highest level of MMA. He forced the UFC to rethink contracts. He reminded fight fans that highlight reels don't tell the whole story. He showed that an Olympic background, a KO streak, and shredded abs don't guarantee success when the lights are bright. He wasn't the first overhyped signing, but he was the most expensive lesson in UFC history. And lessons that costly, they echo. Hector Lombard's UFC career stands as a monument to what happens when fantasy meets reality, and reality hits back. The most expensive prospect signing became the UFC's most expensive mistake. Sometimes the paper champ never makes it past the first test. Sometimes Olympic medals and knockouts just aren't enough. And sometimes $400,000 buys you the coldest reminder in combat sports. There are no guarantees in fighting, only gambles. And Hector Lombard was a bet that never paid off.